Can we turn the camera and audio on? Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Monday, September 25th, 2023. It is 12:10 p.m. This session is set to go until 1:30 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast from 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom, we have Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. And we have staff from CPED here today to discuss the Shoreline Master Program Public Hearing follow-up.
Thank you. Oh, I'll just say that you have a series of follow-ups at your request. We weren't able to get them just at exact like 2-week intervals. We had to be creative about where they're at on your calendar, but this is not the only follow-up meeting you'll have. There will be a series until you get enough information. And so for today's, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Josh.
Great. Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you, Commissioners, for this next opportunity to engage and provide information. They say a journey of 1,000 steps starts with a single footstep. We are now towards the end of this Shoreline Master Program journey, which has taken years on end. And knowing that we want to make sure that the board has all the information to get it as right as possible in terms of what we provide to ecology for their approval on our SMP, Shoreline Master Program. And I think that Andy DeFobis and staff have done a great job of answering the questions that have come up. We know this is complicated and that many folks within the community have concerns and input on their property specifically, but also thinking bigger picture in terms of the shoreline designation. This is a big topic, and we want to make sure, again, that you've got all the information you need to make those decisions appropriately. And recognizing that if it takes more work sessions, it takes more work sessions. So Andy's done a really nice job of chunking out the decisions so that they're able to be considered and that they all kind of build on one another, leading towards the hopeful end of this journey where we submit something to the Department of Ecology. So barring any other questions or anything to add, I just wanted to provide that appreciation of this ongoing process that is the journey of SMP. Andy, anything more? Ready to go?
Ready to go?
Okay.
Here's our presentation. Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrew DeFobis, Senior Planner with Community Planning. We're here today to continue discussion of the county's Shoreline Master Program Update, or SMP for short. Today, I will provide a brief overview, brief project background to provide some context to the board and anyone watching the briefing, and then we'll continue exploring some specific topic areas from the public hearing and items that the commissioners have requested. So the board will first take a look at proposed environment designations for some specific shoreline reaches that were teed up last time, revisit the decision matrix that was prepared alongside the board's public hearing materials, and finally, I've got some additional requested information on shoreline variances that the board has asked for. And then a very quick update on buffers if we get there. So Thurston County is updating its Shoreline Master Program as required by state law. The update includes both comprehensive and periodic updates to shoreline requirements that have occurred since the current SMP was adopted in 1990. The SMP regulates development and redevelopment in the county's shoreline areas. Generally, this includes Puget Sound, large streams and lakes, and associated wetlands and floodplains and other such critical areas. The board held a public hearing on the proposed update on May 16th and has been holding regular work sessions roughly once a month since that time to refine the documents ahead of considering local adoption. Ultimately, the locally adopted Shoreline Master Program will be submitted to the State Department of Ecology for review, and the SMP would take effect upon formal approval by Ecology. So the first item for today is a review of select shoreline environment designations, or SEDs. Assigning SEDs to shorelines is part of the SMP update process, and it builds on information that's gathered during the inventory and characterization phase. An SED is, shoreline environment designations are similar to a zoning overlay in that they control the types of land uses or modifications that can occur in the shoreline, what permits might be required, and the buffers and other development standards that new development would need to adhere to. Earlier in the SMP update, a report was created that matched the shoreline environment designations to all the county's shoreline reaches and showed which criteria were used to match those up. To review briefly, the SEDs used in the master program update include a natural SED, which is proposed for more intact shorelines that don't have a lot of development. Shoreline residential SED, which is proposed for more impacted shorelines. Boston Harbor area is a good example of that. And then in the middle is the Rural Conservancy and Urban Conservancy SEDs, which are proposed for other shorelines in the county that sort of have a mix of some development but retain a good amount of ecological function. And then anything below the ordinary high water mark is considered aquatic. So during the board's public comment period, public comments were submitted requesting redesignation of certain shoreline reaches. Though the SEDs were originally established countywide in the first phase of the update, some of them have been revisited more recently. The Planning Commission looked at several requests for reconsideration, both before and after their public hearing in 2021. The criteria for assigning the SEDs is found in that 2013 report done earlier in the process, and also in the draft SMP. The criteria was included also as part of the materials for this work session, so we can reference that if we need to. Just a few quick caveats before we begin. When this exercise was done at the start of the process in 2013, it was done at the shoreline reach scale, so at a pretty high level scale, and the criteria is really intended to be applied at that scale. So staff has done the best that we can to adapt that and apply that criteria on a smaller scale for the case studies that you're gonna look at. It's certainly possible that one parcel or one shoreline reach, oh, yes.
Andy, as we move forward on this, for all the policy issues that we're going to address, I don't know, setbacks, compliance, whatever it is, could we have a list of those policy issues that are changing and what ecology would accept as the least restrictive, and they've still approved something like that, compared to what we are proposing? That's for farther down the road.
Sure. We could certainly talk about that, and I would want the rest of the board to weigh in as well, because that would probably be a pretty significant undertaking in time. But I think as far as a punch list of things that are changing, we could certainly bring some of that back.
I might
At least
also-
have a matrix of
Yeah,
that particular series of changes.
So I might also jump in that essentially that is the decision matrix that the board has seen previously. So I'm not, help us understand what you think should be added to that.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying anything that we're changing, I'm just curious, how does that fit with what ecology has done in the past on anything? I mean, what is the most restrictive? What is the least restrictive? Because we never get that in a snapshot.
So that's the thing that would take a significant amount of time.
Well, it might, but I want to make sure we don't take people's property rights or without adequate discussion on the topic. That's the only thing I'm asking for.
So what the board had requested previously was to create the decision matrix based on what would be most honoring the residents of Thurston County and also potentially be accepted by ecology. And that's what the decision matrix is all about. So whatever more fine tooth comb the board would like to enact, open to receive.
Well, I guess from my perspective, all of those were addressed by the citizens. The most restrictive and the least restrictive. There was input from each body, if you will, from each philosophy. Which one is the most restrictive? Some wanted a, 500-foot setback or something, if we talk about setbacks. Some wanted a 20-foot setback, so that's the most and the least. But I think it gives the board the ability to understand as we move forward with final policy decisions about what is fair, does it address, what would, ecology accept? What would they not accept? I mean, they're not gonna accept 10-foot boundaries or something. All I'm saying is, we'd like to know, at least I would like to know, and I don't know.
So maybe-
my seatmates.
Is there not a presumption that ecology will accept what you're proposing?
I think, so the staff that I have talked to, because it's been an informal review with sort of my counterpart over at Ecology, the version of the document that went to public hearing is a lot more in line with what the state would accept than what came out of Planning Commission. That was the thrust of a lot of the comments within that decision matrix.
Okay, and this is the decision matrix? And Commissioner Edwards, this is in your packet?
We've got some of it, but we've got a lot of opinions by different individuals, whether they're staff or citizens or ecology, about which, because ecology, is my understanding, is the final decision maker, I guess. We're gonna make recommendations and they're gonna say, oh, that'll work, or it won't work. But I would hate to think that we heard something out of all the information flow that we get, that said, well, you can't go any less than this, or you can't go any more than this, and then find out, well, that's not true. Because Skagit County did what? Mason County did something else. I wanna make sure that when we make a decision, that we have all the information needed to make the proper decision. That's all I'm asking for. We're gonna make some pretty impactful decisions here at some point when we start winding down. And are those in line with the state constitution? Is there a taking or damaging factor that could be taken into consideration? I even think that legal should be able to advise us on each matrix item. Hey, you're okay here. This one, I don't know, maybe, maybe not, you know. As we go down on each one, because I don't think this board should ever make a decision when there's doubt about the outcome of that decision. And I know we always refer back to, well, that was one party's mistake on the whole Maytown thing, but that was $16 million, and there was other pieces that fit in there. I just want to make sure we get it right, that's all.
Commissioner Edwards, I'm confused about your request, sir. So what is it, like a matrix on what specifically? Are you talking about the buffers? Are you talking about like another section of what specifically do you want a matrix on, and what do you want that matrix to?
Well, let's
to
go back
contain?
to the whiteboard that we've got up there.
Those are the buffers.
Yeah, that's just buffers, but there's other things that we're addressing here in this.
And that might be one way to address what you're getting at, is if there are specific topics that you want that comparison on, that might be easier to run to ground and prepare and bring back versus wholesale hundreds of pages of document. That's gonna take a really long time, but
Well,
if you know,
Yeah, but what policies
Aquaculture
are
and
we
this.
changing? Only for those policies that we're gonna change. The other policies or the things that we don't change, they've been in place.
We're
all
gonna be
along.
updating the whole, like, this is what this whole process is. It's reopening the whole shoreline.
But we're only
master plan.
changing really specific things.
No, there were things that we adopted that were recommendations from ecology that we just already said, yes, let's just go ahead. We received no public comment on it.
And
And
that,
it was just
yeah, so,
typographical, like, things that ecology found, and we were like, I think that was one of the first actions we took because it
but
was the.
ecology has an agenda. And I just wanna make sure that we as a board agree with ecology so that as we move forward, we're not doing anything that exposes the county to any liability down the street, down the road here. And I keep falling back on Maytown because we didn't learn our lesson with a $16 million loss from Maytown.
So if you were to look at this matrix of changes that staff have given you, are you suggesting perhaps that there would be an additional column that
No.
would be ecology's least restrictive?
Yes, that's all I'm saying. And what would they accept on that?
Didn't the planning commission already go through that entire process?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Yes,
they
they
didn't
have.
list it out like that.
Our time is the board's time. Whatever the full board would like to share with us, we'd be happy to accomplish.
It's, you know,
Curious about what the level of effort would be
Aye.
to create that. In terms of.
I don't think there's
moving
ever
things
too
along.
high of a level of effort if we're
So we've
gonna be
got
threatened
Three
with a
commissioners here to weigh in on staff time.
lawsuit.
Maytown was interfering in a specific permit. This is a totally
There was
different
more to it,
situation.
there was more to it than that. If you,
I've read the court
if you
decision.
review the emails, staff correspondence
This
with
is
the
apples and
commissioner.
oranges, and this is, there is no way that you can argue for what you're arguing for based on Maytown. And I'm tired of hearing that.
Well,
It's so different. It's completely
it's
different.
unfortunate that you,
And I'll
sir, are.
provide you a copy of the court decision that you can read for yourself if you haven't
Okay,
if you haven't digested it.
And I'll pick out those specific instances that are applicable to what we might be doing here if you'd like. So yes, sir, I'd like to have that. I've only read certain segments, actually, of that whole thing. So it's just a concern. I don't want the county taxpayers to be stuck in a liability situation because we made a decision without all of the information that we should have had to make that proper decision, that's all.
I'm struggling to understand the specific information that you want in a matrix.
Well,
And-
I think Robin kinda laid it out pretty well,
Because
that,
we have the matrix right here that was provided
yes, I've got that.
during, our public hearing that outlined ecology's related position as well as the planning commission. And, you know, we've gone through some of these items. We went through, there were 5 major touch points, and then we approved the ecology indicated required items.
And that's just it, indicated required
They
is
were,
not the same as an RCW that requires it,
this were
or a
all.
WAC requirement.
This were all approved by the planning commission. And it was all in terms of, you know, we went through it already. Like, it was all areas, that were just mostly just changing, it was more of typographical as I remember.
It's a mix.
Yeah, of like smaller items, and so I don't know what a matrix, you know, would do in terms of,
Well, it certainly helps me if I'm gonna vote to take someone's property rights that I feel that could expose the county to some liability if some sharp lawyer wants to get a hold of it.
us not
And do something.
approving the shoreline master plan puts us in a liability. I mean, we're way behind the curve over here right now, and ecology has worked with us. We've, you know, we're working our way through it, and us not submitting this is gonna put us at risk. It's gonna put taxpayers at risk.
Oh, I don't think what we're gonna ask, that what I'm asking for is gonna be all that time consuming because we've got professionals on our staff that can look down through here. And I think Andy works with those folks. He could say, yeah, this is what they require. This is under WAC. This is an RCW. This is not a personal philosophy of one of
It's
the,
right here. It's on the
People
ecology
from the
related
college.
Is
position.
that now not what the ecology position column?
but it doesn't lay it out that tight.
It's giving what their position is on whatever the proposal is, or something that would get it to a place where it's acceptable, but it's not necessarily weighing in on this is the minimum that you would need, or this is where you have more leeway.
It's not, it's kind of what's been agreed upon, but it's not the minimum and it's not the maximum.
And some of it, there won't be a defined answer. There's gonna be ranges of things.
But
And
it is
and
an
we're
option
not
that's not
going
gonna
to
get
know
us in
how
sorry,
ecology.
Legal trouble.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead.
it's not the plan that we put in place as much as if the plan is interpreted wrong, if it's imposed by staff inappropriately, and somebody loses money over it, then that becomes a taking or damaging. And I just wanna make sure we don't get in that pickle any more than we might have to. That's my only concern.
Maybe a couple of quick points out of that, your inquiry. Just to make sure, for the record, it's clear that Thurston County Legal Counsel has been a part of these reviews from the very beginning. So just make sure that that's clear, that all of this has been reviewed by Travis, our prosecuting attorney's office. And secondly, that it was clearly heard at the beginning of this process to try and find the path that was most acceptable to applicants within Thurston County that maintained within our current codes and ordinances, that was least restrictive in terms of how we continue to enact what we currently have in place. And that was heard by the planning commission in terms of how they deliberated. I think if I'm trying really hard to understand what you're saying, Commissioner, and we can add more layers of bureaucratic process to this review if you'd like. And we're open to receive that if there's a clear direction, but I'm struggling to understand what you're asking for. I think what you might be saying is, during the planning commission deliberations, some folks said more buffers, some folks said less buffers. Can you put the planning commission's deliberations into the decision matrix, and then you can see if it was
I'm not wondering about the planning commission as.
because ecology is not going to tell us. It's already, that information is already in the decision
But
matrix.
ecology would tell us that.
Ecology's told us everything they're gonna tell us until we submit the final draft. And until we essentially, have so many colloquialisms going on in my mind. As soon as we submit, then ecology will start to tell us what is acceptable and not. Just to be totally transparent, your staff has worked to honor your direction, and we have pushed the envelope at ecology. You can see on that matrix where ecology says on a number of occasions, likely not, likely this won't be acceptable. So I'm struggling to understand what you're asking for when it's already embedded in the information that you have.
I mean, and if we're talking about buffers, there is already on, that we received a comparison with other counties. There's
I'm really not
Kitsap,
talking about
Mason,
specifics.
Lewis, Pierce, and it goes through the list and it matches what every other county has
Yeah,
on here. And then the other decision we made was about conforming or non-conforming. And we heard from ecology on that, and then we heard from the residents, and we decided to go, with kind of what people were saying and say they were conforming. I mean, that was the second decision point. So
That's right.
and then the ecology recommendations that are listed here, I mean, they have the wax in them. So I'm just trying, and right now we're going over, we went over last time, the proposals to change. We had a lot of conversation about this, we had the maps, and this is kind of what we're going to be reviewing now. So I don't know what additional information you need that hasn't already been provided. Because all the information, I mean, that you're asking for, and it's right here,
Yes,
I'd also add, in terms of implementation, it might be helpful to understand, so this is our long-range planning group. They help set the rules and have the community conversations. In terms of implementation, that's Brett Burris's group in Development Services. And what we do know, in looking at what is in draft here, is that it adds flexibility and customer service to our applicants in Thurston County. Clarity that we don't currently have in our SMP. And so any delay just delays flexibility and clarity for your residents. And if that's something you'd like to maintain, the current relatively difficult and confusing SMP that we have, or repeal and replace it with this draft that adds clarity and flexibility, that is on the Board of County Commissioners. But recognize that when we're saying things are complicated in the development services implementation, SMP is one of those. And this SMP draft is working to resolve that. And so the further you delay, the longer it takes for us to not be able to implement a less confusing process. That was a confusing way to state that.
I guess I'm not looking for delay, for sure. I want to expedite the process as much as I can.
And that's what Andy's here for.
Yeah, but my concern is, I guess I'm not using, it was brought up that maybe, and I referred to that, okay, the buffers. And I realized that other jurisdictions adjoining us, and I think Mason County had a bigger buffer in some place than maybe that we ended up on. That's very possible. I'm just wondering, when we make a particular change, and maybe it has to do with buffers, but maybe it has to do with the docks. I really don't know. I'm not trying to be specific. I'm just, what's the least, least restriction we or the citizens can get away with and not be in violation of something?
So, oh, sorry to
A
interrupt.
tolerance thing, that's all.
So we're-
Looking for
I
tolerance.
think Andy had a good suggestion. In terms of continuing to move the full process forward, we'd be open to having a one-on-one with you to maybe address some of your specific concerns. But we would also suggest if the board would like to proceed, we do have a full agenda that we have.
I know we have a full agenda today, so let's just keep going, we'll see.
But up to the board, if we wanna continue to have this conversation, that's fine too.
I'm just,
We're open to provide that one-on-one.
I guess I'm always looking for clarity as to what we can and can't do.
So
And I
as-
know it's not all black and white.
Right, and as we go through these, perhaps you could highlight, oh, and this one I'd like to know
Okay,
X.
okay, okay,
So that it could be more specific guidance,
okay.
because the general work that you're asking for could
Might be
take
too
a
broad, huh?
significant
Yeah.
amount of time.
Okay, let's see where we go.
All right,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So what are we scheduled to go till?
1:30,
Okay.
yeah.
We started at noon?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're back in 3 weeks, so we'll get there.
Okay, commissioners, we're gonna carry on.
Okay, great. So just to recap, so we'll jump into a couple case studies here of folks who have asked the board to reconsider how their properties are being designated under the master program. But just some things I wanted to let you know. The criteria you're gonna be looking at were designed to be used at a larger scale, and we're doing the best we can to apply it at sort of this smaller scale. And you may find that some of these shoreline areas meet the criteria of more than one category, and you're really looking for what is the best fit
Kind of a
given.
split decision, maybe?
Or, yeah, what's the best fit, given all the information that you have?
Okay.
And then, the presentation I'm giving you is just a really brief summary today of each case, but there's more materials in your briefing. And, we've teed up some options for you, but, you know, the board can certainly consider other options that are not on the slide. So the first one we're gonna look at here, is on the south end of Pattison Lake in, so the reach you see outlined in light blue in the top picture is reach LPA 7 to LPA 8, and LPA is for Lake Pattison. The owners of the parcel that is circled in yellow have requested reconsideration of their proposed SED for that parcel. They also own the home that's on the parcel immediately to the south. So the SED on that parcel is currently mostly conservancy, with a small bit of it in the southern portion being rural or shoreline residential. The entire parcel is proposed to change to natural, along with the rest of that reach that you see there in blue in that upper picture. The residence to the south is in a different reach altogether and is proposed to be shoreline residential. So the landowners have requested that the county keep this current split designation essentially that we have currently to reflect the residential development that's present on a portion of that subject parcel, and then to designate the rest of the parcel urban conservancy. So some considerations to assist the board in this analysis are that much of the parcel in question appears to be heavily vegetated and unaltered. But there have been some residential improvements to portions of this lot, which include some clearing, landscaping and trails, a concrete staircase, and a dock. Like many cases we'll look at today, this property appears to be in sort of a transition zone between areas that are much more developed to the south and areas to the north that are much less developed in the rest of that reach. And the landowners did send in, I believe, a letter to the board last week, so you may have seen more information come in from them recently. So some options for the board today would be to recreate the current SEDs using a professional survey that was submitted by the landowner and provide a shoreline residential SED to a small portion of the property and urban conservancy to the rest. The dotted line in the bottom image shows approximately where that split would occur, roughly. And another option would be to retain the proposed natural designation for the entire parcel, which is what the planning commission voted to do upon review of this issue. The third option is to designate the entire parcel as urban conservancy to avoid a split designation. But again, due to that gradient of development and shoreline conditions in the area between what's more developed to the south and less developed to the north. So I'll pause there and I'll also remind the board that we do have the other map I can switch to if you wanna kind of toggle those things on and off, the layers.
Thank you. I saw your hand up and then.
No, after Commissioner Mensah.
Could a fourth possibility be to keep the corner residential and then jump to natural? Otherwise, don't you have just a blob of conservancy and then it would jump to natural?
It could,
Isn't that something we're trying to avoid?
it is something the board could choose to do. I think the broader methodology at large was to designate each shoreline reach one SED, but we're kind of under the hood now as we're further down the path, and these are the specific questions the board is getting. So I think previous methodology did seek to avoid that, but I don't know that there's anything,
I'm just saying, it seems to respect, I'm trying to respect
so.
what the property owner is trying to do, but not kind of disrupt this overall consistency where we don't have like, okay, here's residential, and then there's one parcel that's conservancy, and then we move along to natural. I mean, if it's possible to keep them more high level,
Mhm.
right? And the planning commission said natural, so obviously that's not wrong, or probably. And currently it's conservancy?
Currently, most of it is conservancy, but there is a small triangle there in the southwest corner that is currently shoreline residential.
But do the parcels above it stay also conservancy?
That, I believe so. I think that whole reach where you see that big wetland and highlighted in blue, I believe is currently conservancy. I'd have to run the map to
Yeah,
look.
let's go to the map.
Let's go to the map. Okay, one sec.
Because I think there's two kind of things at play. So there's, I think, Andy, I'm gonna get wrong with what you said, but there's
Go for
it's
it.
one thing that we're trying to serve in terms of the way it was done previously, but also there had been a discussion that we wanna look at the reach level. And so if we go from residential to a little blob of urban conservancy to then natural, that doesn't honor the reach level look.
That's what I'm trying to.
Thinking about it.
That's what I'm trying to.
And so to honor the
See.
reach level look, it could go from residential to natural. And I think that would be an acceptable designation is what I heard from Andy.
I'm not saying that for sure that's right, I'm just thinking out loud and seeing if it makes
So that's
sense
current?
to anyone.
Yes, so this is currently that area, that wetland area in the woods there is designated conservancy. It's proposed to be natural, so you can kind of see as it changes from the yellow to the green. And the subject parcel, which is right here,
Zoom in.
yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, good, highlight it. So there you can kind of see underneath is that yellow, it's proposed to become natural. And if I take off what's proposed, you can see where there's that split. So a portion of that lot is currently shoreline residential, a portion is conservancy. I couldn't tell you exactly why it looks like that. That was from 1990.
There's
but-
something on that corner that is developed and.
This is the area in question where the landowners have said, they're, and again, the parcel lines are not totally accurate. This is the portion of the property where it's in more intense use. So they've got the dock there, they've got the hillside is landscaped, there's trails going down to it. And then those materials they submitted last week do a better job, I think, of showing the subject parcel as a whole and kind of conditions throughout that parcel.
So keep in mind that little split as the current standard, so that little pink going into that parcel. And then Andy's gonna switch to the proposed and get rid of the current.
It snaps to parcel lines and considers the subject parcel with the rest of that reach to the north.
So in Commissioner Mentzer's inquiry, that little piece that was pink is now taken away in natural, but could be pink on that yellow parcel line in the corner.
Kind of
that would
splitting the difference between the two.
Yeah, so and they did submit a survey, so we don't have the benefit of surveyed information on a lot of these cases, so we have some information we could work with them to create that split if that's something the board wants to do.
Or maintain the split that's already there.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
So the request by the landowner is to do, it's one of the options, is to do what?
I think their preferred option is to create the split where it's shoreline residential and urban conservancy. So essentially to recreate the current conditions. That's what,
Okay.
they want it to stay what it is,
And-
more or less.
I'm sorry, that's close. So in meeting with the constituent, I think what the baseline request is, he wants to be able to use that bottom corner not as natural. That's the,
Right.
that's the request.
Okay.
Bottom
And
line.
how we get there, he's open to receive. So the split into residential and natural, he did relate that would be acceptable. It's just he wants to be able to use that bottom corner, not having it designated as natural.
And
That's
he
his
doesn't really
baseline
care
request.
what happens to the other portion above, other
I
than,
can- yeah.
I-
I don't know about his care.
he doesn't want a development.
I think their preferred outcome would be the Urban Conservancy, just for full disclosure on the balance of that parcel. So,
And then, and
We have,
urban,
we have a difference, because in the meeting, he said, however the board gets there,
Yeah.
I wanna be able to use that bottom corner.
the bottom part,
But where it's pink now,
Right.
he wants
where
it
the
to
dock,
stay.
where the dock and stuff is.
Yep, not to be too complicated.
So what is he asking for compared to the other choices? I'm trying to figure out why wouldn't we wanna honor what he wants? And if we don't honor what he wants, are we doing a disservice to him economically? I mean, possibly. Is it gonna lower the value? Is it gonna retard some use that he won't have if we take a certain action? So I'm wondering, why not do what the landowner wants? In this case, means we're changing zoning. Is there a reason not to do that?
Let me tackle that piece by piece. So in terms of uses of the property and how those could potentially change, as I mentioned, what SED gets assigned here is gonna control the pattern of future development that's gonna be allowed on that property. So if it's natural, for example, versus shoreline residential, the buffer for new development's gonna be larger. Or there may be certain uses that simply are not allowed because it's in natural versus some other designation. And, that potentially could have, play into the value of the property. That's something they'll decide across the hall, the assessor's office.
Right, but if the owner wants that, why wouldn't we want that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why wouldn't we wanna do what the owner wants to do? Because I think it protects the environment, protects the future of that property. I mean, he might have come in and said, yeah, I wanna build 7 houses along there, but that isn't what he said, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we wanna do what he wants? I'm just trying to get that in my head. Why not?
I think the board has the option,
Well,
and
yeah, I
think
know
there's-
we have the option,
yeah,
but why? Why would we wanna do other than what he wants? Than the owner wants? I don't know who the owner is, so. Is it an
Um,
individual?
It is an individual, and yeah, he came to I think the last work session or the one before.
So is there a reason we wouldn't wanna do what he wants? So from a staff's perspective of, well, yeah, we don't wanna do that because why?
From a staff perspective, I
Yeah.
think there is more flexibility and more justification for something like a shoreline residential in that portion of the property where there's more use. So down there by the dock and things like that, to me, that passes more of a straight face test, that area is in more intense use than other portions of that parcel that you can see appear to be fully treed. And they did submit more photographs of that area underneath the canopy, but there's not a whole lot of permanent alteration that says, the whole thing should be shoreline residential, for example. And this is where we get into that sort of gray area of that criteria. And again, we're looking at one parcel using criteria, a tool that was designed to be zoomed much further out.
To Commissioner Rhodes' question, help me go back to your concern, that, are we splitting the parcel, is that the concern? We have a designation that's on one parcel, 2 designations on one parcel?
I think it's not ideal necessarily, but in this instance, we do have a survey, we have tools that
Yeah.
can potentially be used to draw that actual line on a map. In
Yeah.
future development, they're gonna have to do another survey to demonstrate, yeah, I'm on the pink side, I'm not on the yellow side, or whatever color it is.
Right.
So I think it presents more of a challenge in implementation, but it's not insurmountable. And again, we're in this space because the citizens have asked us to look at these issues. The process that brought us to this was not quite so granular. We were zoomed much further out. So
Yeah.
we're only here because it's a specific request, and fortunately, there's only a few of those.
It's
Yeah,
already split. We're not creating a new split.
No.
It's currently split,
Right.
right, yeah,
Like
exactly.
I would be not probably supporting of creating a new split.
Mhm.
But maintaining a current split when there's actually justification and they backed it up seems okay to me. But I think to answer Commissioner Edwards' question, you know, there's criteria about whether you choose, like, why not do what he wants? Well, because he wants his conservancy not to be flipped to natural. There's criteria for that. Planning Commission thought it was more consistent with natural, that part. I'm not talking about the corner.
Right.
I'm talking about the rest. And I also thought there was a secondary piece, which was not to have like parcel by parcel patchworks as much as possible, but keep, you know, in broader swaths. So if we were to keep that yellow, but the rest is green, you know, that's deviating from that a little bit. Those are the, right? Those are the two
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, and I think at this time, the board is being, responsive to public comment, and whereas the methodology at large would not be to zoom in and do it piano key for every single parcel,
Yeah.
this is public comment, and you're being,
And I'm okay with that corner
proactive.
myself, just so my teammates know. I'm okay with
But-
keeping the pink corner. Because it's there and
Sorry.
it's,
Northern part of that, which was proposed to be natural, actually is shoreline residential. I mean, it's currently developed, and that northern part of starts to curve.
Yeah, so
and
one
goes
thing.
back to residential.
One thing I would say, this whole big pink blob here over the lake is simply because the lake is currently considered rural. That whole area would be aquatic going forward. So if we're looking at the split between the lake and upland, that's where you see the upland in that whole wetland area is currently conservancy. And then this is showing basically where we think the layers as it goes from wet to dry or water to land.
I'm trying to minimally mess with the planning commissions, because I don't
Sure.
think we should be going too deep into this parcel by parcel stuff. So I'm trying to minimally mess with the planning commission's recommendation, but still meet the core consideration that the property owner came up with, that, you know, and he was able to justify an argument. So that's kind of where I'm thinking about, but I don't think there's a right answer here per se, but I'd like to just make
There
it,
might not be a right answer.
I'd like to just make a decision and move along, since we've got.
Okay, so then let's start with the little corner piece and that decision point.
And maybe we could also staff verify that with the property owner, that is within the keeping, because if Andy and I have a slight difference of opinion on that nuance, I wanna make sure and run that to ground, so
Okay.
we'll ask him specifically, are you okay with that corner being pink and the rest being green in terms of natural? Is that acceptable to the board?
Sure.
And then that honors not having that little blob of yellow in the middle and looking at
Because
this from-
whatever happens, the next time a Board of County Commissioners reviews this, I don't know, it might be completely surrounded or something, and they might change the zoning, I
Yeah.
suppose,
designation.
you know. And so I'm just trying to honor the request of the landowner is what I'm trying to do. It sounds like he's trying to protect the land from turning into a development. Sounds like.
And I think those two.
He's not?
They're trying to maintain the flexibility
Right.
to use that parcel as it's currently being utilized. So I think there's concerns that they won't be able to maintain some of their trails and landscaping and the dock and things like that. But the SMP does have that flexibility within it. But to be fair, again, going forward with something like a shoreline residential or an urban conservancy does leave more doors open for future development than a natural would. That's not what they're talking about doing now, but that is part of the calculus.
And I think those are the two main points in terms of honoring the property owner's request and not monkeying around too much with the planning commission's direction. I think that little slice of pink honors the applicant or the property owner's request, and going to shoreline residential honors the planning commission's request and not changing too
Going
much.
to natural.
You mean natural.
Natural, excuse me. Oh, thank you. Got turned
Right.
around.
In doing so, aren't we actually potentially then, we're devaluing his property through a regulation, if he wanted to do more? I'm just using that as a example of us through regulatory process end up devaluing. And devalued is listed in the definition of damaging.
So what I just relayed was the middle ground. So if you go to the proposed, it takes it, the planning commission recommends that it goes all natural, which would go into I think where you're headed to in terms of concept of devaluing. And we're not I think what we're talking about is not saying that. We're gonna try and keep that, we're gonna check in with the property owner to see if he gets that little slice of pink that honors his request. So we're trying to find that middle path.
Well, but I'm concerned what the rest of the property gets, what kind of regulation.
I mean, when I had a meeting with the planning commission chair, there's, I don't know, dozens, hundreds of parcels that have been I mean, if that's the direction you're going, any uptick is gonna take their property and we're gonna be liable and we can't do it, then we better delineate the next several months, because that's one of the arguments that the planning commission chair made to me about the buffers is that, well, the actual total amount of buffer increases because we've shifted so many parcels from conservancy to natural, or from residential, not so much from residential to conservancy.
That's a lot. Especially
Yeah,
in the
so
ratio.
anyway, I mean, I don't know the specifics, Andy can flesh it out, but I mean, we're just looking at one example, there are many examples.
That's why you still have, reasonable use
Right.
and or variances, right? So you create the designation, but you still have a path forward for someone to, in the future, design something for the use of that project or that parcel.
Except if it's put natural.
It doesn't preclude.
They could still build something, so there's gonna be a larger buffer, but it can still be built, and if there's no room on that property outside the buffer, that's where the variance provisions would kick in to allow them to reduce that buffer.
Right, so if it got to,
Reasonable use.
right, so it gets back to the same tools we have with pretty much any regulation. You put something in place because you're trying to find something that can be easily administered across the board, knowing that on a parcel by parcel basis, the land is going to speak. And so there will be limitations, and you give people a path forward to trying to achieve what it is that they want to do within reason.
While protecting the environment,
Yeah.
for example.
Right, it's that balance, I think, that we try to achieve in any regulation.
I don't always think we try to achieve that. Sometimes we go ahead and do the taking portion of it and let the court worry about it. Sometimes. I'm trying to
There's
stay
a
away.
goal to achieve, strive for is balance.
Yeah, this is not that right now. So this is the board's choice to try and find that middle path.
But you made a good suggestion that you guys figured out. Yeah, we're good to go. Let's go.
Talk to the landowner
Make sure we
and-
get it right.
Okay.
So,
Great.
but what's being proposed to the landowner is pi plus natural?
Yeah, essentially taking this pink and kind of
Stretching
pushing on the
it.
green.
Stretching it back to where it already was.
Leaving the
But just
pink.
changing
Yeah.
the yellow to green.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
It's clear as mud.
Leaving
I
the pink.
got it though. I got it.
Okay.
We're good.
He's on it.
Okay. All right, so then I will go back to our presentation.
So that was the first item?
That was the first of 4 cases. I think they get a little more straightforward as we go through,
I don't know,
so.
don't say that.
Okay. All right, just a bit of a lag here. There we go. Okay, so the next one we'll look at here, we are on the east side of Eld Inlet at Green Cove. This is looking at reach MEL 29 to 30, which again, Marine Eld is how we get the MEL, and it's reach 29 to 30. So it's outlined, the whole reach is outlined in that light blue line. This area is currently designated conservancy. The planning commission reviewed this reach and changed it to natural during their review. Several landowners have written in or came in to the board's public hearing to express support for returning this SED to conservancy, or to rural conservancy. And some things for the board to consider here is that a lot of this reach is heavily vegetated within shoreline jurisdiction. Although on the northern end, there is a large area, you can see within that blue line that appears to be less vegetated. This area features an intact estuary. There are a few structures that are present within shoreline jurisdiction, which include a house on the parcel on the north end, right here. And then there's another house on the south end, partially within that mapped jurisdiction. The shoreline does not appear itself to be altered with things like docks or bulkheads. It's fairly unaltered. I would also point out that there's this large parcel on the south end here, which goes off the screen, that's owned by the homeowners association in the area and is used for recreation.
Can you point to that area?
Oh, yes, and I'll go to the other map too, but it's this whole big parcel that kind of reaches around.
And
These
is the other, on the other side of the horseshoe, is that private on the
Yes.
other side?
Yeah, there's one
Private
landowner
who-
who owns both of these two.
Who does?
There's one landowner who owns those two,
landowner.
right. So the HOA owns that parcel on the south. So some options for the board to consider would be to designate the entire Reach Rural Conservancy, which is what many landowners requested of the board.
What about the landowner that owns the land?
The HOA,
No, the landowner that actually owns the land up there.
the north,
northern-
that, their request is to be rural conservancy. So every lot that's within this blue shape, they've all requested rural conservancy with the exception of that large homeowner parcel on the south end.
But now I want to question that, because the homeowner parcel, I mean, you look at it like, oh, you know, trees and looks like, you know, they
Yeah.
haven't cleared it out, but you said it's used for recreation and I don't know, that speaks to me like what conservancy is like, it's used, it's traveled, but you know, but it's still got ecological function. I mean, why, isn't that consistent with conservancy or am I off base on that?
I think it is consistent with conservancy, but you have to look at the big picture and the overall degree of alteration of that parcel. And so one of the criteria of rural conservancy does not meet the criteria to be designated natural. And I think that's where, when staff looked at this and what the planning commission was looking at was, it appears to be very unaltered and in a natural state.
But if I understand, Andy, and to correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I was told that actually staff did not recommend this to go natural. It was sort of they had, and that's why the folks were kind of upset, because they didn't see it coming, so to speak. Like a planning commissioner said, well, I think, basically made the argument that you just made, and at the tail end of a meeting, and it got switched. But the actual staff came forward with it staying conservancy. Is that correct?
So staff originally recommended to the planning commission, so the citizen request that came in was, hey, this whole cove area should be natural. That's what it should be. So staff looked at that and brought it back to planning commission, and my recommendation was that portions of the area appeared to be natural, like you could extend it on one side, which is on the southern side here. But on the north end, I felt that these two parcels here more fit the criteria of conservancy and had been correctly designated. So I was looking at this and saying that whole area pictured, you know, that the northern side seemed to be more in line with rural conservancy and that the balance of that reach would be natural. That was my
So you were gonna split that,
correct,
bottom green, top yellow.
correct. And the planning commission
They took the
looked
whole
at that
thing.
and said the whole thing should be natural. So then, yeah, that's getting into those options are
I
for the
pointed
board.
something on the map.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can pull up the other map if that's
Yeah, do
helpful.
the current.
So there's a
Change
total
maps.
of,
We're gonna change maps, but it's a better map.
I'm gonna give you a better map.
Sorry,
A better map to
Yeah.
point at?
we're gonna go, yeah. we're-
bigger.
Yeah,
Your map to point at.
So
let me-
from my notes here, I had that there's a total of 8 properties that, and then out of those 8, 7 of them recommended that they wanted to stay in urban conservancy. And then one of them, which was the HOA, wanted to stay natural.
Correct.
So then where are those other 7 properties located, I guess is my question. Is it just the
Nestled under
top?
there. No, watch.
So we've got these two parcels, which are one ownership. You've got this parcel, you've got this parcel, this is the HOA parcel, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 more individual small residential parcels.
Maybe the proposed.
That aren't on the shoreline, actually.
Technically, they're not on the shoreline, but they are within shoreline jurisdiction, just because of where the ordinary high water mark is mapped. Of course, we have to go out in the field and verify all of this, but
But see, Andy,
Some of
that's
it
what was
is until it's
confusing me is
not.
because if you say keep the south, if you say keep the south natural or make the south natural because of that homeowners,
right.
you're grabbing parts of 3 parcels there that are clearly developed.
Like here, here,
Here,
here,
these
yeah.
three.
Yeah, like you're not just able to confine that to what's truly natural. Because of the jurisdictional reach, it grabs what's clearly conservancy
So I
at
guess
best.
that's my question too. Why wouldn't you go like that and not
And it-
grab
it
this
could.
guy's property?
So we do have yeah, we could look at that, that's something the board could, if they wanted this all to be natural right along the water, but have the portions of these parcels that are within shoreline jurisdiction be something like conservancy, that is an option for the board to do. Again, it's all gonna get verified in the field as to whether any of those parcels are actually in shoreline jurisdiction when we go out and do it. When they apply for something, if they do, so.
Have Commissioners ask, go.
Okay, so, Andy, I wanna make sure I get this right from the geological, geology of the land. This is the bottom, river water, or
That's
creek
the
water.
estuary, yeah,
That's the estuary here.
correct,
The high ground is all along here,
that's right.
right here,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody realized that this is not
It's not flat,
swamp or anything.
it's not flat, it's
Any of this,
bluffs.
it's a high ground area.
Right.
And so that's my concern, what you had, is why would we take this person's property, basically? Why would we take his property rights? Why wouldn't we take that out? And I guess the same over here in a couple places.
Yeah, can we go by parcel lines and just make the HOA parcel natural?
I think we could make that work.
Let the actual developed properties be conservancy?
Keep the yellow everywhere else.
Yeah.
I think so. So again, this was originally in 2013 when they did their first pass at the start of this project. That whole area, I believe, was proposed to, well, it came like this. This was natural, this was conservancy. And so there was some split of conditions out there to where a portion of it would be natural, a portion of it would not. But I think, yeah, if the board wanted to return to something that's closer to that,
And,
could do
and the
that.
same thing applies here. He's haying that field yet. And this area here, I don't know why we would put limitations, and that's his house, isn't it?
yeah, those are the two parcels that, when I looked at this, said
You're gonna
take
take
those
those out,
stay
right?
conservancy. Yeah, my recommendation was for those parcels on the north there to stay,
I'm at an absolute minimum,
Sure.
at least where you were.
sure.
That's where you started. And then if we can be even more targeted than that, then my ears are open. But I think we should at least do what your initial recommendation was, because I agree with the reasoning there. Just develop, there's a house within the thing.
This one, you're actually splitting out possibly.
It's a small.
And that
So the
is steep.
shoreline,
Yeah, that's
hiked
steep
down,
too.
I have
Yeah.
hiked down there.
200 feet.
That's all steep ground all the way around there, so.
So a split then with conservancy to the north, I'm assuming north, because it's on the top of the map, and then natural to
So
the
where
south.
would the line be, Andy? Like right here?
So
somewhere?
I'll show you so that blue line is now showing you what the
HOA.
HOA parcel is. So what we're saying is everything that's on this HOA parcel could potentially be
Green.
natural. I think the conditions on the ground justify it. What I'm hearing from the board is these chunks that are within these
Well,
privately
that's
developed
actually taken out
parcels
already.
to make
right?
these be conservancy. Yeah, these are just parcel
And
lines
Andy,
now.
why, can I ask you, the 3 property owners that are under the yellow,
Right.
why do they care? I mean, the 2 of them aren't even in the jurisdiction, and one of them, it's just the very back piece of their property.
It's just these two. This one is mapped fully out of jurisdiction.
So how do they even, like, what's their dog in this fight?
I think they're concerned like what Commissioner Edwards was saying, it's what can I do with my property? What are my opportunities?
But they already have their house all set up there. Like, if they wanna put a mother-in-law apartment way back in the very back of that parcel,
Like there?
yeah, like, that's
Exactly.
what they couldn't do now?
Potentially.
Yeah, they could not do that.
That's a minimum, I mean, I don't know, that doesn't seem like it really affects them as much as it affects the folks on the top.
I'd have to go back and look at all the specific public comments, but I know folks were concerned about potential loss of use. They were concerned about that we've been, stewarding this property and it looks natural because we're doing the work, kind of.
Yeah.
We're
dare
keeping
you.
it natural.
Right, exactly, sure. So you heard different things from different landowners around here, but these folks have been fairly vocal, so there's quite a bit of written comment attached to the briefing. I don't wanna speak for them, but those were kind of some of the issues I recall from testimony.
I met with them all a long time
Sure.
ago. And they were all there, all of them were there, every single one. And we wanted to be conservancy. So I know they had a reason, I just don't, I didn't have the map as clear in my head with respect to those southern parcels
Yeah.
as I do now looking at it.
Right.
I was just listening kind of generally.
So at the end of the day, would anything change for that area?
If there's a split, it would.
Well, if we could keep if we could keep the HOA parcel natural, then you'd have green along the southern piece, just not as deep.
yeah. I think I'm with you.
So it would be, yeah, it would kind of come up around here.
Hate to say that.
This piece would stay natural. The rest of it, what I'm hearing would be rural conservancy. So, I mean, yeah. Well,
It's basically the tree
Yeah,
line,
you
the
haven't-
southern tree line.
You haven't piped in on this one?
No, I'm kind of on the same page as well. It's just, I think it's just strange how those three parcels got kind of swooped in here as well. I think that's just kind of what I'm having kind of issues with there, because the HOA property's like right there too, right? So it's just,
But like, for example, just so I'm clear, let's take the house on the left. The house is out of the shoreline jurisdiction, but their whole backyard, basically, I'll call it,
Correct.
is in. If their house burned down or whatever, if they needed to rebuild something it really wouldn't, the shoreline stuff wouldn't affect them, because even though part of their parcel's in, the part of the parcel that would be being rebuilt is out.
Well, the buffer, that's where we get into that whole piece. If the buffers for marine stay at 250, technically the buffer would be larger than what you see here as map jurisdiction.
'Cause that's 200 feet.
Right. However, the SMP does have, the update has a lot more flexibility, as Josh said, than the current draft. I think currently, if your house burns down and you're in shorelines, there's a question as to whether you can rebuild, depending on the value of the structure. But now, with the update coming, there's a lot more leeway within the footprint. You got a footprint, it's already been altered, it's been that way for
See,
decades.
Commissioner, we have a
So-
reason to get this thing done. People are being hamstrung
Yeah.
by government bureaucracy, and we're trying to make it better.
Making
then-
headway, we're gonna get there.
so with that whole down area, I mean, if we were to make it, just leave the HOA property natural and then the three houses at the bottom as conservancy, as well as kind of that.
And there's these two parcels as well.
So you could just make the yellow start at the east parcel line, right here.
Can you take those?
Don't we know the concept between us? Let them figure that out.
Could.
You're looking for a
Then we
split.
could move on.
Yeah.
But Andy, can you within a vertical buffer have two different designations, or is that no-go?
I
Like
think,
a split, I guess you'd call it a
I
split.
think you can.
But it's on parcel lines, does that make
Yeah,
it
it's on
better?
parcel lines, and I think there's some language in the SMP that also talks about, how does it apply when your parcel is kind of landlocked and there's another parcel between you and the water.
Okay,
So I think,
that might give us some extra flexibility.
yeah,
I mean, I know there's some value to having things track parcel lines, so that could be good, but I don't know. Then you'd have that whole,
So, sorry, man.
okay.
So articulate for us one more time what the board is thinking in terms of,
Here's what I'm thinking.
I'm gonna defer to the commissioner here.
This conservancy,
mhm,
I made this conservancy
mhm.
and this natural.
Is that legal?
We'll find out what,
That's pretty much what they're asking us for,
yeah,
right?
that's what they're essentially asking us for.
Because
That,
these folks wanna be natural and they look like they deserve to be natural.
and I think the argument to be made there, Andy, is that right now, there's no natural there, right? Oops, sorry.
currently, it's all conservancy.
Yeah, so we're just adding, like, if you go to what it
So-
is now, you're just adding natural here, like,
So if
Right,
ecology is like, why do you have those little blobs of yellow?
so
So we can
now
say, hey, we've just added natural.
we're
Well,
just adding natural here.
and the pattern here is that if that is what the board does, every single property that is conservancy going forward has a home on it, and the parcel that does not have a home on it is what the board is
Yeah,
making natural.
seems pretty defensible to me. It's a net uptick in protection, because we're taking something that's conservancy and making it natural. But we're not overreaching to parcels that already have developed homes. That's what I'm thinking.
I don't think I could have said that better.
Another middle ground.
That, just for the record, that does match what the constituents have asked for essentially. So, okay,
Two down.
2 down. That's what I'm, for the record, hearing, yes, is the HOA parcel natural, the rest of that reach rural conservancy, that will be what the board, when it sees its next map, that's what it'll be.
We're getting head nods, yes.
Okay, great. Just wanna capture that.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
15 minutes.
2 down, 2 to go.
I remember the last two being simpler.
Yeah,
So, okay, here we're still on Eld Inlet, we're looking at reach 2A to 2B. This is on the west side of Eld Inlet, and the reach includes these 2 parcels that you see here, these 2 residential parcels and a sand spit. It is currently conservancy, it's proposed to be rural conservancy, and one landowner is requesting shoreline residential for this area. And that's because they had originally came to the planning commission and said it should be shoreline residential. Are coming back and requesting that switch back. Some things to think about here are that this reach does feature residential development. It's got homes and docks and vegetation clearing within shoreline jurisdiction. These homes are a bit further back from the water than what you see in the reach to the immediate south, but the whole area does have residential development fairly close to the water. There's still some native vegetation visible on these parcels, and there is a sand spit estuary in the area. Again, this reach is sort of in a transition zone between much more dense development to the south that's in a separate reach and less dense development to the north, which is natural. So some options for the board would be to designate the entire reach shoreline residential and essentially restore what this had been, in the original proposal, the SMP, or to retain the rural conservancy SED that was set by the planning commission.
And this one was one of those weird ones, right, where it was the landowner who got confused and requested the rural conservancy to the planning commission. The planning commission had decided to do it as, keep it as shoreline residential. Landowner was confused, came in and was like, no, switch me over to rural conservancy. And then the planning commission, honored that request. The landowner later realized, oh no, like,
I didn't want that.
I didn't
and what
want
did
that.
you realize? What was it?
I think he said he learned more about all the shoreline regulations and all the different things that would help protect this area. I think his main concern was
Regardless, even if it
protecting
was
this-
residential.
protecting the sand spit, right, exactly. So even if it's shoreline residential, I mean, that area is still gonna be in a mapped floodplain, it's habitat, it's not,
Can
no
you
one's
show
gonna
us the bigger
develop that.
map?
Sorry?
Can you show us the reach map
Yes.
again? That's usually really helpful.
Yes, I can. Yeah, and I can kind of point out, it's a good example to show, it's a good example of showing how the methodology works and the scale that it works on, because when you include those 2 parcels with everything else that's developed with homes there, it really is instructive. Okay, so currently,
Those are cool maps you have.
this is current, so as of the 1990 SMP, we're looking at this area is currently in conservancy. When the original, when the update went forward, it was proposed to be shoreline residential with everything to the south. Per planning commission action, they've made it rural conservancy, and the landowners are requesting that it return to shoreline residential.
So it was really that it was gonna change and he requested it not to change.
Correct.
But now he's saying, oh, I was wrong. Go ahead and
Right.
change it the way you were
Yeah.
gonna change it.
And so
And can you?
yeah, so this whole area, what I was saying is, you look at these 2 parcels and they're not terrible, they have more in common with the things to the south than they do to the north. So this was an example of, in my, personal professional opinion, that they got it right back in 2013. This would not have been on my radar without having the issue being raised by the planning, or
Alright,
by the citizen.
I'll vote to just put it where he wants it.
So back to pink. Can we go back to the map real quick?
Yes. The slide.
The designation.
Oh, okay. So this is what we currently have. And the proposal obviously shows that it's yellow, but again, before it went to planning commission, this was all pink.
So the decision to the board at this one is, do you wanna honor the landowner's second request, which is
His mistake or?
the shoreline residential, so that yellow would be pink?
Stretch the pink over the yellow.
stretch the pink over the yellow. Head nods yes?
3-0 on that one.
3-0.
Okay. Great.
A lot going on in Eldon.
Yeah, for some reason. Okay.
Well, it's that transition zone. It's very natural with homes.
Okay, the last one I've got for you is also Eld Inlet. It's reach 6 to 7, also on the west side. The reach in question is outlined in blue. It's currently conservancy and proposed to be natural. The owner of the parcel that's outlined in yellow has requested a rural conservancy SED for their property.
It's the opposite of what we just saw. He wants to put, it's pink to the right, it's
It's-
green to the left, and
Yeah.
he wants to create a little yellow blip.
Correct. That is correct.
What's the argument?
Just the level of development that's out there, that's what I think this landowner, you know, in looking at the criteria, I sent all these folks the criteria, and his argument is, you know, my pattern of development matches the conservancy much more closely than it does any other SED.
And there's aquaculture.
Yeah, so this reach, most of this reach appears to be pretty heavily vegetated. There are a couple homes mapped within shoreline jurisdiction, some vegetation clearing and landscaping on the subject parcel. And there are no bulkheads or docks visible, but there is an aquaculture operation adjacent to this parcel because the landowner leases their tidelands. And once again, property's sort of in the middle in terms of the level of development. If you look to the right versus look to the left, it's a little bit more developed than the other parcels in the reach, but not quite as much as the things that you see to the right. So some options for the board here would be to provide that rural conservancy SED to that one parcel, or to retain natural for the entire reach. So
Can you zoom in on the parcel
Let's do the designation.
yeah, I'll switch over to the
so I
other
can
map.
see more, like what's more developed there?
Sure. And I think, this is right in the area of Burfoot, or not Burfoot, Fry Cove Park
Oh,
context. Okay. So this is the subject parcel right here. And then you can see their tidelands that they lease.
so there's a home tucked on the parcel right above him,
Yes,
and that's natural,
correct. Well, it's proposed to be,
proposed to be
because
natural.
currently this is all conservancy, I believe, yeah.
And is he different enough to warrant something in between what's north of him and what's south of him? That's the question.
Correct.
Can you put the current on and zoom out?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And those little lines out there in the tide flats, that's aquaculture?
Yeah, it looks like it's flip bag aquaculture. So zoomed out
So that's current.
currently. Right, and then the proposal is rural conservancy. So this is an example of an area where you have the marine, currently it's rural or that's shoreline residential and it's proposed to be conservancy.
Hmm.
So that whole area to the right is, you know,
It's also
increasing
conservancy.
protection essentially. So what his argument is that I'm more like my neighbors to the right than I am to the left.
So zoom in on that split, the yellow to green transition.
Sure.
So where it's green right there, he wants it to be yellow.
Yes, on,
Can you
I
remove the
guess on these
color
two
again?
parcels.
The
I'm sorry,
green is
Can you remove
natural.
the color?
Yeah.
Just to see what's there.
Sure.
So there is some development there.
Yeah, he's got a home there. I believe from other aerial pictures I've seen, there's some landscaping in between the house and the water, and then there is the aquaculture system. To me, there was a question of when that actually got put in and was it even there when the original inventory characterization was done? Because if you go back and look at the aerial images, it's right around that 2009 to 2012.
Is that an important factor? Like if there's aquaculture out there, then it's more like conservancy, or is that important?
I think it may have factored in. I don't know if what the outcome would have been, but I mean, we will allow aquaculture in all designations.
So let's put the
So-
designations back on and then let's ask, is there any major problem with honoring the request?
So that's,
I mean, I guess the argument is, you know, the parcels to the right are smaller, they're denser. I mean, it's like he's got a little more space and trees and, I mean, that's the difference I see.
Yeah.
With his argument that I'm more like those guys than the ones above me to the north. I don't know if that's really true. Those houses are pretty close together to the south. But that's only one
Isn't
thing.
that a house right here?
Yeah.
That is, yes,
Mm-hmm.
correct. I think all those parcels that go up in that reach, they're all developed to my knowledge, almost all of
I
them.
mean, is that really the way you wanna do it? Make the house, so this guy comes in, he wants to put a, I don't know, garage out there or something. Now he can't do it because
You still
it's
can.
more restricted.
You still can do it in urban conservancy. That's how they got their houses built there in the first place.
It's going to
No, I think the
natural.
house was there before the conservancy thing was put in place.
Maybe,
They were probably there before the 2012 CAO update,
Right.
which increased the buffers in these
Right.
but they
areas.
still have path forward to do a garage. So the question though is, that northern property owner, that with that other house, he didn't ask anything.
No, the only person that we heard from on this whole reach is the one subject parcel.
And they asked to stay yellow.
Correct.
I thought it was yellow and green, not pink.
This is
and-
the current designation.
That's current, but go
Yeah.
to what we're moving it to.
Right. So he's kind of he's right on the boundary of where this change was made by the
He wants to stay yellow.
original
There's
2013
no-
analysis.
No loss, no change if you were to remain conservancy as everyone to the right or south becomes conservancy.
Yeah, it's apples to,
Oh,
Apples,
right
so-
now he's with the folks above?
He's yellow.
right now, he's currently conservancy. He's asking to stay conservancy, essentially, rural conservancy. So
Oh,
It's-
and right
that's
now
a-
the line is right above him? No,
So,
no, the line is.
Go back to the current. There's no natural right there. It's all
yeah, it's all
conservancy.
conservancy, but there is still a split in the same general area, where it gets more developed to less developed.
But again, if we're talking to ecology and we make that line, put him in the keep him yellow,
Right.
and we're adding
Everything,
natural.
everything else around him, the protections are increasing.
I'm just making the point that, as to his argument that I'm more like the ones above me than below me, well, that's not what some previous,
He's saying
The opposite.
He's saying he's more like the ones below.
I'm more like the ones below me, but that's not what a previous shoreline plan said. It kept him with the ones above him.
Well, so we'll go back to it, cause they're, yep, there you go.
So
So
you
the
can see,
conservancy versus the residential. So the residential was more developed, densely developed. And where that pink is gonna turn yellow.
Yeah, and it
Go
looks
back
like,
to the-
I know, but what he's asking us to do is reversing that, like,
Shoreline residential.
He's not asking to reverse, he's asking to align
Stay
with
the
the
same.
pink.
he wants to align with the folks to his south, and right now he's aligned with the folks to his north.
right now, yes, and proposed, yes, that's correct.
Can you get rid of this stuff here so we can, and this to see?
I can move the picture or zoom out.
Yeah, okay, well,
So we're adding a lot of natural to this designation.
So you can see, yeah, where the green stripe is over everything, that's
Can you-
currently
okay,
conservancy.
can you get rid of this?
Yep.
Like that? Commissioner?
Yeah, because there's a house here and
Mm-hmm.
right here.
And then the rest of that, I think, is the county park.
And that's why I was all
County
concerned.
Park, Fry Cove, and that estuary is probably why they're trying to preserve that function there. I would, I don't think, that yeah, I mean, this is kind of,
Have we had any input from
Call.
staff on this? Somebody from our staff lives right out here. I think.
That I don't know.
So that's the request is stay yellow or go green. And we could go either way, it's the board's decision.
Except the proposal's gonna put some of these places where there's a building.
We heard nothing from any of those other
Cool.
folks.
Yeah, but maybe they weren't home, or maybe they
So-
didn't get the word, I don't know.
So we can shift the decision if you'd like, but that's the one that's on the table is,
Why, do we need to do anything at all there?
You don't have to
Do
make
we
any
have
changes.
to do anything?
Mm-mm.
that's a decision also. So the board can choose to honor the property owner's request to be conservancy.
No, but we're changing some other things as well, aren't we, besides his request?
So what you see here in the proposal, this is all from, that early phase of the document. So the only change that's being requested at this time is the one parcel. So that proposed change was proposed back in 2013 and has just carried forward and hasn't changed.
And the planning commission approved that change as well.
Yeah,
So we're just doing the one, that spot.
yeah,
Putting the
this
yellow and
landowner,
The last green there.
right,
Just shifting the yellow up a parcel.
So
Okay,
close.
so can we show us where the property is and,
It's where the
What-
cursor is there.
yeah, and let's go ahead and make a decision because we're right at time.
so
and-
this is his property here.
Okay,
Stay green, go yellow.
I'm okay with going yellow. I mean, it's,
Yeah, me too.
It's not a hill I'm gonna die on.
Go yellow.
Okay, all right, thank you.
SEDs.
More to come.
Check. I'll put that on the board.
Yeah, landowner requests or.
What's the date?
25th of September.
All right, thank you. I'll leave you to your rest of your.
What's next, Danny?
Enjoy.
Grand Mound.
No, I mean, what's
Oh.
next for Shoreline?
Next, well, I've got a couple things that we didn't get to today. There is the decision matrix, there's some information on variances, and then there's several other topics. So I'll just prepare some more information to, keep ticking those things off and bring them back. So October 16th. is your next
okay,
one. Yeah.
great. So let's go.
Thank you.
It is 1:31. We are adjourned.